Ever since she was a little girl, Emily dreamed of being a mother. She carried her dolls everywhere, dressing them, feeding them, and rocking them to sleep as if they were real babies. She imagined the day she would hold her own child, a tiny person with her eyes and her husband's smile. When she met Jake at 22, the dream only grew stronger. He was kind, funny, and shared her love for family. From the moment they started dating, Emily knew she wanted to have a child with him. If it had been up to her, she would have started trying right away. But Jake was more patient. He wanted to wait, to build a life together first. Emily agreed, but deep down, something inside her told her that time was not on their side. She felt an urgency she couldn't explain. 2 years passed, and Emily's dream was about to come true. But not in the way she had imagined. Emily was lying on the couch, her head resting on Jake's lap, when the dizziness hit. They were watching a terrible movie, one that made her stomach churn. Something didn't feel right. She had just finished her period a few days ago, so why did she suddenly feel so strange? A quiet voice whispered in her mind, "Check." Curious, she got up and went to the bathroom. When she saw the blood, frustration filled her. Not again. But then, something deeper told her this wasn't normal. On a whim, she grabbed a pregnancy test. 2 lines. Her heart stopped. Then it pounded in her chest. She was pregnant. She ran downstairs, breathless, barely able to contain her excitement. "Jake!" She gasped. "I'm pregnant." His eyes widened in shock. Then he smiled, pulling her into his arms. But when she whispered, "I'm bleeding," his smile faded. Fear gripped them both. Something was wrong. Emily reached out to friends who had been pregnant before. They told her spotting was normal, that everything would be fine. She clung to their words, repeating them like a prayer. The next day, she went to work as usual. As a medical assistant, she had seen many pregnancies, healthy ones, complicated ones. She told the doctor she worked with about her pregnancy and the bleeding. His face grew serious. "You look pale," he said gently. "I think you should go to the ER. Just to be safe." Emily hesitated. She didn't want to overreact. But something in his eyes made her listen. A coworker drove her to the hospital. There, a short woman with black hair examined her. The tests showed strong pregnancy hormones, good news. But then the doctor's words stole her joy. "You're bleeding a lot," she said. "Your cervix is closed, so I can't tell if you've already lost the baby." Emily was sent home, unsure of what would happen next. That night, fear kept her awake. The next day, she would lose her baby. Emily was alone in the bathroom when it happened. A sudden gush. A tiny, unfamiliar weight left her body. Her heart pounded. Panic swallowed her whole. No, no, no. Tears blurred her vision. She looked down, but she couldn't bear to see. She couldn't hold her baby, couldn't save it. There was only one thing she could do. She flushed. The guilt hit instantly. She gripped the sink, sobs shaking her body. "I flushed my baby." She felt like the worst mother in the world. And this was just the beginning of her heartbreak. Emily's doctor confirmed what she feared. She had polycystic ovarian syndrome, PCOS. With your type of PCOS, you can get pregnant easily, the doctor explained. But staying pregnant. That's the challenge. Emily's stomach turned. So. What does that mean? The doctor hesitated. It means. You might never carry a pregnancy to term. The words crushed her. She felt like her body had betrayed her. Over the next few years, she would endure this pain over and over. 7 more times, she would take a test, feel that rush of hope, only to have it ripped away in a wave of pain and blood. She stopped telling people. She stopped letting herself believe. It hurt too much. In the middle of her heartbreak, Emily's sister announced her pregnancy. Emily tried to be happy. But a small part of her ached with jealousy. Why was it so easy for her sister when Emily wanted it so badly? But when her nephew was born, everything changed. The moment she held him, a deep, unconditional love filled her heart. She spent every moment she could with him. Babysitting, taking him on sleepovers, cherishing every giggle, every tiny hug. For the first time in years, she felt joy again. But her journey was far from over. One cold January morning, Emily felt an old, familiar nudge in her heart. Check. She had no symptoms. No nausea, no dizziness. But she took a pregnancy test anyway. 2 lines. Her breath caught. It was faint, but it was there. This time, something felt different. She didn't hesitate. That night, she wrapped the test and gave it to Jake as an early birthday present. When he opened it, his hands shook. He looked at her, his eyes searching. She smiled. "I think this one will stay." He didn't speak. He just pulled her close. For the first time in years, Emily let herself believe. Emily's pregnancy was nothing like before. She wasn't bleeding. She wasn't cramping. Instead, she was overwhelmed by a sickness so strong it knocked her off her feet. Morning sickness? No. This was much worse. Every day, she threw up violently. She couldn't keep food down. She felt weak, exhausted, and miserable. But despite the pain, she clung to one thought: this is a good sign. Jake hovered over her, worry in his eyes. "Are you sure this is normal?" Emily forced a smile between waves of nausea. "It means the baby is still there." 9 long months of sickness, complications, and fear. 9 months of waiting. And finally, on a scorching summer day, their rainbow baby arrived. Ariana. She was perfect. Emily held her daughter, tears streaming down her face. The pain, the loss, the suffering, none of it mattered anymore. She had won the fight. Or so she thought. Emily expected happiness. She expected to feel whole. But instead, after Ariana was born, something dark crept into her heart. She should have been overjoyed. She was overjoyed. But the exhaustion, the endless crying, the overwhelming weight of being a new mother, it was crushing. Some days, she barely recognized herself. She loved Ariana more than anything, but something inside her felt broken. Jake noticed. "Maybe you should talk to someone," he suggested gently. Emily shook her head. "I'm fine." And for a while, she managed. The postpartum depression wasn't unbearable. It was just there, lurking beneath the surface. Then, 4 months later, everything changed. It started as nausea. Emily brushed it off, maybe she ate something bad. Then, the exhaustion hit. And then, a whisper in her heart. Check. She didn't want to. Not yet. But she did anyway. 2 lines. Her stomach dropped. She wasn't ready. She had just survived 9 months of pain. She was still recovering. Ariana was only 4 months old. She stared at the test, dread creeping over her. She should be happy. But all she felt was fear. Jake opened the bathroom door. She turned to him, holding the test with shaking hands. His eyes widened. Then, slowly, he smiled. "We're having another baby." She nodded. But this time, she didn't feel hope. She felt trapped. The second pregnancy was nothing like the first. It was worse. The sickness was relentless. The exhaustion unbearable. But more than that, the fear, the doubt, the guilt. She should be happy. After all, she had prayed for this, hadn't she? But she wasn't ready. Jake was thrilled. But Emily was drowning. 9 more months of misery. 9 more months of wanting to escape. She felt like a terrible mother, a terrible wife. And then, on her birthday, their second daughter arrived. McKenna. Another beautiful, healthy baby girl. But Emily's heart wasn't ready. McKenna was different from Ariana. She screamed. She screamed when she was hungry. She screamed when she was full. She screamed when Emily held her. She screamed when Emily put her down. She never stopped. Emily tried everything. Rocking, feeding, singing, swaddling. Nothing helped. The postpartum depression that had been manageable with Ariana was unbearable now. She felt like a failure. A fraud. A mother who had begged for children and now wanted to run away from them. And her marriage. It was falling apart. Jake tried to help, but she pushed him away. She was lost. And she didn't know if she would ever find her way back. Then, one day, McKenna stopped screaming. It was sudden. Shocking. 13 months to the day that she had started. She simply stopped. Emily waited, holding her breath. But there was silence. For the first time in over a year, she could think. She could breathe. She looked at her daughter, really looked at her. And for the first time, she saw something other than exhaustion and frustration. She saw love. It wasn't McKenna's fault. She was just a baby, scared and needing comfort. And Emily? She had been so lost in her pain that she hadn't been able to see it. But now, she could. And it changed everything. Things didn't get better overnight. But they did get better. Emily started to feel like herself again. She laughed more. She slept more. She began to truly bond with McKenna. To cherish the moments she had been too exhausted to enjoy before. And Jake, he was still there. Still waiting, still loving her through it all. One night, as they sat together, watching their daughter sleep, he reached for her hand. "I missed you," he whispered. Tears filled her eyes. She had missed herself too. Ariana was the gentlest soul Emily had ever known. She was sweet, thoughtful, always looking out for her little sister. She was sunshine on a rainy day. McKenna, on the other hand, was fire. Fiercely attached to Emily, always by her side, always needing to be close. She was wild, energetic, and passionate. And Emily loved them both more than she could put into words. Motherhood hadn't been easy. It had been the hardest thing she had ever faced. But looking at her daughters now, she knew, every heartbreak, every tear, every sleepless night had been worth it. They were worth it. Even with all the love in her heart, Emily still thought about them. The ones she had lost. Who would they have been? Would they have had Jake's smile? Her eyes? Would they have been wild like McKenna or gentle like Ariana? She would never know. And that hurt. She carried their memory with her, quiet but ever present. But instead of breaking her, it made her stronger. She had lost so much. But she had also gained everything. Emily finally opened up to Jake about everything, the pain. The guilt, the fear. And to her surprise, he had been waiting for her to talk. He had been hurting too. They had both suffered in silence, each too afraid to burden the other. But now, they healed together. Day by day, moment by moment. And love, real, unshakable love, grew between them again. Emily never saw herself as strong. But looking back, she realized, she was. She had fought through loss, through heartbreak, through fear. She had survived. And she had built a beautiful life. Ariana and McKenna. Her rainbows. Proof that even after the darkest storms, light could still shine through. She still wondered. She still mourned. But she also loved. And that love was everything. Emily wouldn't trade a single moment. Not the pain. Not the loss. Not even the hardest days. Because they had led her here. To her daughters. To her family. To a love that would last forever. And she wouldn't change a thing.